This is the man I always wished had been my dad. My name's Franklin Hughes. I'm 62 years old and I just watched my daughter toast her stepfather at my grandson's naming ceremony. The words hit me like a sledgehammer to the chest, but I didn't flinch. 30 years of raising Sophia alone, and this is what I get. The party was at some fancy venue in downtown Denver. Sophia had insisted on the best of everything for little Jacob's naming ceremony. I'd written the check without question, just like I always did. The room was full of her husband Trevor's business associates from Velwick Publishing, their wives dripping in jewelry I couldn't pronounce the names of. My side of the family was represented by my sister Janet and her husband. I sat at the family table watching Sophia hold court with her new in-laws. She looked radiant in that way new mothers do, all glowing skin and careful makeup. Trevor stood beside her, one hand on her shoulder playing the doting husband. And there was Harold, her stepfather, beaming like he'd just won the lottery. Harold had married Sophia's mother when Sophia was 16. Good timing for him. He got to swoop in right when all the hard work was done. I'd spent the first 15 years teaching her to ride a bike, helping with homework, staying up all night when she had the flu. Harold got to be the fun guy who took her shopping and paid for her college without having to deal with the messy parts of actually raising a child. But I kept my mouth shut. Always did. The toast wasn't supposed to sting like this. I'd prepared myself for a generic speech about family and new beginnings. Instead, Sophia had looked directly at Harold when she said those words. He'll be the only grandfather my child ever knows. Not one of the grandfathers. The only one. I excused myself to get some air, but nobody noticed. They were too busy congratulating Harold on his new role as the family patriarch. I stood on the venue's balcony, looking out at the Denver skyline, and felt something cold settle in my chest. It wasn't anger exactly, more like clarity. 30 years ago, when Sophia's mother walked out on us, I could have remarried, could have found someone to help raise my daughter. Instead, I'd focused everything on being the best father I could be. I worked double shifts at the construction company, saved every penny for her education, missed countless opportunities because Sophia came first. And now she was erasing me from her son's life, like I'd never existed. I pulled out my phone and scrolled to my lawyer's number. Some decisions you make in the heat of the moment. Others you make when everything finally becomes crystal clear. 24 years ago, I was a different man, single father, working concrete foundations for driftshade construction, trying to figure out how to braid my 8-year-old daughter's hair before school. Sophia's mother had left us for a sales manager from Phoenix, and suddenly I was everything: dad, mom, cook, homework helper, and bedtime story reader. I remember the first time Sophia asked why mommy didn't love us anymore. She was sitting at our kitchen table, coloring in one of those books with the thick black lines, and she just looked up at me with those serious brown eyes. I told her that sometimes grown-ups make mistakes, but that didn't mean anything was wrong with us. That I loved her enough for both parents, and I meant it. For 15 years it was just us. I taught her to drive in my old pickup truck in the parking lot behind the grocery store. Helped her with algebra homework even though I had to relearn it myself first. Sat through every school play, every parent-teacher conference, every teenage crisis about boys and friends, and the unfairness of life. When she graduated high school, she hugged me so tight I thought my ribs might crack. "I don't know what I would have done without you, Dad," she whispered. "You're my hero." That was 3 months before her mother came back into the picture. Eleanor had remarried by then. Harold was a regional manager for some insurance company, drove a BMW, lived in a house with a 3-car garage. Suddenly, Sophia was spending weekends in their guest room, which Eleanor had decorated like a magazine spread. Harold took Sophia shopping for college clothes, bought her a laptop, talked about investing in her future. I should have seen the shift happening. The way Sophia started comparing my 2-bedroom apartment to Harold's house. How she began mentioning Harold's opinions on things. Which college she should attend, what career path might suit her, whether she was dating the right kind of boys. When she got engaged to Trevor, Harold walked her down the aisle. She asked me to do a reading instead. "It's more meaningful," she'd said. "Anyone can walk someone down an aisle, but you're the one who taught me about love and commitment." At the time, I'd been touched. Now I wondered if it was the first step in pushing me aside. The trust fund had been my idea. $2 million, set up when Sophia turned 21, with additional provisions for her future children. My lawyer had suggested including certain conditions, maintaining family relationships, demonstrating respect for the benefactor, regular contact. I'd thought it was unnecessary at the time. Sophia was my daughter. Why would I need legal protection for my own child? But lawyers know things about human nature that the rest of us learn the hard way. I drove home in silence after the naming ceremony. My apartment felt smaller than usual, like the walls had moved closer together while I was gone. I sat in my recliner and stared at the photo on the side table, Sophia in her cap and gown at college graduation, grinning at the camera with her arm around my shoulders. The trust fund documents were in my filing cabinet, exactly where I'd put them 12 years ago. I spread them across my kitchen table and read through every clause, every condition, every carefully worded provision my lawyer had insisted on including. In the event that the beneficiary publicly disavows, disrespects, or attempts to exclude the grantor from family relationships or significant family events. There it was. The lawyer had called it a respect clause back then. I'd laughed and said Sophia would never do anything like that. He just nodded and said it was better to be safe than sorry. The more I read, the clearer everything became. This wasn't about the money, though $2 million was nothing to sneeze at. This was about consequences, about teaching my daughter that actions have weight, that words matter, that you can't just erase people who inconvenience your new narrative. I thought about little Jacob, barely 3 months old, already being programmed to see Harold as his only grandfather. What would Sophia tell him about me as he grew up? Would I become the weird old man who sent birthday cards, the stranger who showed up to family events uninvited? My phone buzzed, a text from Sophia. "Thanks for coming today, Dad. It meant a lot." I stared at the message for a long time. Too little, too late. I called my lawyer first thing Monday morning. Patricia Walsh had handled my legal affairs for 20 years. She'd drawn up the trust, my will, my business contracts back when I'd tried to start my own construction company. She was sharp, practical, and didn't waste time on pleasantries. "Franklin," she said when I told her what I wanted to do, "are you sure about this? Once we trigger that clause, there's no going back." "I'm sure. And you want to redirect the trust to your goddaughter's child? Isabella deserves it more than Sophia ever did." Isabella was my best friend Miguel's daughter. When Miguel died in that car accident 6 years ago, I'd helped his wife Carmen raise Isabella. Drove her to soccer practice, helped with her homework, taught her to change a tire. She called me Uncle Franklin and meant it. When her daughter Lucia was born 2 years ago, Isabella had asked me to be the godfather. At least someone in this world still valued what I had to offer. "All right," Patricia said. "I'll have the papers ready by Thursday." I hung up and felt lighter than I had in months. 2 weeks after Jacob's naming ceremony, I had Patricia serve Sophia with the papers at her house in Cherry Creek. I didn't want to be there for that conversation. Some things are better handled by professionals. Sophia called me 20 minutes later. "Dad, what the hell is this?" Her voice was high and tight the way it got when she was trying not to cry. "Patricia Walsh just handed me some legal documents about the trust fund. What's going on?" "You should read them carefully," I said. I was sitting in my truck outside the hardware store watching people load lumber and paint cans into their cars. Normal people doing normal things. Everything's explained pretty clearly. This says I'm in violation of some respect clause. That's insane, Dad. I respect you. You know I do. Do I? Of course you do. I invited you to Jacob's ceremony. You were at the family table. And what did you say during your toast? Silence on the other end. Long enough that I wondered if the call had dropped. Dad, I didn't mean... You said Harold would be the only grandfather Jacob ever knows, in front of a room full of people. That sound respectful to you? I was emotional. It was a big day. I wasn't thinking clearly. You were thinking just fine. You wanted everyone to know where I stand in this family. Well, congratulations, now you know where you stand with me." She started crying then, full sobs that might have broken my heart 6 months ago. Now they just sounded like manipulation. "Please don't do this, we can work it out. I'll apologize publicly if that's what you want. I'll tell everyone you're Jacob's grandfather too." Too late for that. "Dad, Trevor's business depends on investor confidence. If word gets out that there's family drama, it could affect his partnerships. His company just launched a new imprint. They need stability right now." That was interesting. I hadn't considered how this might affect Trevor's precious publishing company. Maybe I should have. Should have thought about that before you decided to erase me from your son's life. "I wasn't erasing you. God, you're being so dramatic. This is exactly why Mom left you." The words hung in the air like smoke, sharp and ugly and impossible to take back. "Is that what you think?" I asked quietly. Dad, I'm sorry. I didn't mean that." "Yes, you did. And now I know exactly how you see me. Your mother's victim. The man she was smart enough to leave behind. Well, here's some news for you, sweetheart. Your mother left because she was selfish and irresponsible, not because there was anything wrong with me. And if you want to follow in her footsteps, that's your choice." "Dad, please, can we just meet somewhere and talk about this face to face?" "Nothing to talk about. The trust fund is being transferred to Isabella and Lucia. They appreciate family loyalty. You might want to look that up sometime." I hung up before she could respond. The phone rang again immediately, then again, then a string of text messages that I deleted without reading. I turned the phone off and drove to Home Depot. Bought some lumber and hardware for a bookshelf I'd been meaning to build. Sometimes you need to work with your hands to clear your head. That evening, Isabella called on my landline. "Uncle Franklin, I just got the strangest call from some lawyer. She said you're setting up a trust fund for Lucia." $2 million, I said, "for her education and future. Figured it was better invested in someone who actually wants me in their life." "Uncle Franklin." Her voice was soft, careful. "What happened?" I told her about the naming ceremony, about Sophia's toast, about the legal papers. Isabella listened without interrupting, making small, sympathetic sounds at the right moments. "I'm sorry," she said when I finished. "That must have hurt so much." It did, but hurt passes. Stupidity lasts forever. "Are you sure about this? It's a lot of money, and she's still your daughter. Being someone's father doesn't mean you have to accept being treated like garbage. Your dad taught me that." Isabella was quiet for a moment. "He did always say you were the most stubborn man he'd ever met. Miguel was a smart man. He was, and he'd be proud of what you're doing for Lucia." After we hung up, I felt something settle in my chest. Peace, maybe. Or just the absence of anger. Either way, it felt like progress. 3 days later, I found out just how deep Sophia's betrayal ran. Carmen called me around 8 a.m., her voice tight with anger. "Franklin, you need to see something. Isabella showed me some messages on social media." "What kind of messages?" "The kind where your daughter is painting you as an unstable old man who's having some kind of breakdown. She's telling people you're being manipulated by Isabella and me, that we're gold diggers who convinced you to change your will." I felt my jaw clench. "What else?" "She's saying you have early dementia, that you've been forgetting things and making poor decisions. She's building a case to have your mental competency evaluated." So that was Sophia's game plan. If she couldn't guilt me into changing my mind, she'd have me declared mentally unfit, take control of my finances, maybe even have me committed somewhere, clean and simple. She posted in a private Facebook group for new mothers. Carmen continued. Isabella's in the same group. She screenshot the messages before Sophia could delete them. "Send them to me." "Franklin, are you sure? They're pretty awful." "Send them." An hour later, I was reading my daughter's words on Isabella's phone. Phrases like, clearly not thinking rationally and showing signs of cognitive decline, and being taken advantage of by people who never cared about our family. She'd painted a picture of a confused old man being manipulated by opportunistic family friends. The comments from other group members were worse. Suggestions about elder abuse hotlines, legal resources for dealing with incompetent relatives, sympathy for poor Sophia dealing with her difficult father. I handed the phone back to Isabella. Make copies of everything. Send them to Patricia Walsh. Uncle Franklin, I'm so sorry. I had no idea she was capable of something like this. I did. The truth was bitter, but clear. I just didn't want to see it. That afternoon, I drove to Patricia's office. She was waiting for me with a stack of printouts and a grim expression. This changes things, she said. Attempting to have you declared incompetent while actively violating the trust conditions. That's not just stupid, it's legally actionable. What are my options? We can file a defamation suit. We can also accelerate the trust transfer and add additional conditions that make it impossible for her to challenge your mental competency. If she wants to play hardball, we'll show her what hardball really looks like. Do it. Patricia leaned back in her chair. Franklin, I have to ask, are you doing this because you're hurt, or because you genuinely believe this is the right thing to do? I thought about that for a moment. About Sophia as a little girl crying because her mother had left. About Sophia as a teenager, rolling her eyes at my rules but hugging me goodnight anyway. About Sophia as a bride, asking Harold to walk her down the aisle while I sat in the second row like a family friend. Both, I said finally. But mostly because she needs to learn that actions have consequences. I spent 30 years protecting her from the real world. Maybe it's time she experienced it. All right then, I'll have the new documents ready by Monday. I drove home through afternoon traffic, past the construction sites where I'd spent most of my career. Honest work, building things that would last. I'd tried to build something lasting with Sophia too. Maybe I'd just used the wrong materials. That evening, Isabella brought Lucia over for dinner. 2 years old and full of questions about everything. She helped me make grilled cheese sandwiches standing on a step stool at the counter, carefully placing cheese slices on the bread. Uncle Franklin, she said seriously, Mama says you're my fairy godfather now. Something like that, sweetheart. Will you teach me to drive when I'm bigger? Absolutely. Some legacies are worth preserving. Others need to be started from scratch. The news about the trust fund change hit Denver's social circles like a dropped brick. Patricia had arranged for the announcement to appear in the business section of the Denver Post, complete with details about the respect clause violation and the subsequent reallocation of funds to more deserving beneficiaries. I was drinking my morning coffee when Sophia's mother called. Franklin, what on earth are you doing? Eleanor's voice had that sharp edge I remembered from our divorce proceedings 24 years ago. Harold is beside himself. Sophia's been crying for 3 days. Morning to you too, Eleanor. This is insane. She's your daughter, your only child. My only child just spent the last week telling people I have dementia and accusing Isabella of elder abuse. That sound like daughterly behavior to you? She's upset. She made a mistake at the naming ceremony. People say things when they're emotional. People show their true colors when they're emotional. There's a difference. Eleanor was quiet for a moment. Then, this is about me, isn't it? You're punishing Sophia because I left you. This has nothing to do with you, Eleanor. This is about your daughter's choices. She was 16 when I remarried. Harold's been more of a father to her than the man who raised her alone for 15 years. The one who worked double shifts to pay for her education while you were playing house with your insurance salesman. That's not fair. Fair? I laughed, but it wasn't a pleasant sound. You want to talk about fair? Fair would have been you stepping up to be a mother. Fair would have been Harold acknowledging that Sophia already had a father. Fair would have been my daughter remembering who sacrificed everything for her before she decided to erase me from her son's life. Franklin, please. She's talking about legal action, challenging your mental state. Let her try. I've got documentation of everything, including her little social media campaign. If she wants to make this public, I'm ready. Eleanor hung up without saying goodbye. Some things never change. The fallout was swift and comprehensive. Trevor's business partners at Velwick Publishing started asking pointed questions about family stability and public relations concerns. 3 potential investors pulled out of meetings, citing the need to reassess the management team's judgment. The publishing world was smaller than people realized, and family drama had a way of making people nervous about million-dollar deals. Trevor called me personally on Thursday. "Mr. Hughes, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Sophia never meant to exclude you from Jacob's life. She was just acknowledging Harold's role in her upbringing. By saying he'd be Jacob's only grandfather. It was poor phrasing. She's devastated by your reaction. Not as devastated as she's going to be. Look, I get that you're hurt, but this situation is affecting more than just family relationships. My company. Your company's problems aren't my concern, Trevor. Maybe you should have thought about that before you let your wife disrespect her father in public. What would it take to resolve this? Some kind of apology? Public acknowledgement? Nothing. It's done. Mr. Hughes, please. We can work something out. Sophia's willing to do whatever it takes. 2 weeks ago, she was willing to do whatever it took too. Turns out that included questioning my mental competency and accusing Isabella of manipulation. So no, Trevor. We can't work something out." I hung up and immediately called Carmen. "How's Isabella doing with all this attention?" "She's worried about you," Carmen said. "Feels guilty about the money." "Tell her guilt's a luxury she can't afford. That money's for Lucia's future, and Lucia's going to need every advantage she can get. What about Sophia? What about her? She's still your daughter. My daughter died the day she decided Harold was the only family that mattered. Some bridges burn themselves. Others, you light the match." The final blow came when Patricia filed the defamation suit 3 weeks after the naming ceremony. The lawsuit included screenshots of Sophia's social media posts, sworn statements from witnesses at the naming ceremony, and medical documentation proving my mental competency. The Denver Post picked up the story the same day. Local businessman sues. Daughter for defamation following trust fund dispute. The article included details about the trust fund transfer, the respect clause violation, and Sophia's subsequent attempts to question my mental state. It painted a clear picture. Wealthy father protects himself from ungrateful daughter's false accusations. Sophia's lawyer called Patricia within hours requesting a meeting to discuss settlement options. Too late for that. Trevor's business collapsed faster than a house of cards. Investors fled, authors broke their contracts, and Velwick Publishing's board of directors voted to remove Trevor from his position as executive editor. The company's stock price dropped 30% in 2 days. Harold tried calling me once, leaving a rambling voicemail about family forgiveness and Christian values. I deleted it without listening to the whole thing. The best part was watching it all unfold from the sidelines. I didn't have to do anything except exist and let the consequences play out naturally. Sophia had destroyed her own reputation, damaged her husband's career, and lost $2 million in the process. She showed up at my apartment on a Tuesday evening, looking like she hadn't slept in days. Dark circles under her eyes, hair pulled back in a messy ponytail, wearing sweatpants and an old college hoodie. "Dad, please, can we just talk?" Nothing to talk about. I was wrong. About everything. The toast, the social media posts, all of it. I'm sorry. Sorry doesn't fix anything, Sophia. What do you want me to do? I'll make a public apology. I'll tell everyone you're a good father, a good grandfather, whatever you need. I don't need anything from you anymore. She started crying then, standing in my doorway like a lost child. For a moment, I almost felt something. Pity, maybe. Or just muscle memory from 30 years of being her father. But then I remembered her words at the naming ceremony, the Facebook posts, the calculated cruelty of it all. The trust fund money's gone, Sophia. It's in Lucia's name now. Can't be changed. I don't care about the money. Yes, you do. And even if you didn't, it wouldn't matter. You made your choice. I made a mistake. You made a series of deliberate decisions. Live with them. I closed the door. 6 months later, I was teaching Lucia to fish at Cherry Creek Reservoir. She was 3 now, old enough to hold a kid-sized rod and ask endless questions about why fish live underwater and whether they get cold in the winter. "Uncle Franklin, look." She pointed at her bobber, which was dancing on the surface. "Is that a fish?" "Might be. Keep your rod steady." We didn't catch anything that day, but Lucia didn't care. She was more interested in the ducks and the way the sunlight sparkled on the water. Isabella sat beside us on the dock, reading a book and occasionally looking up to smile at her daughter's chatter. This was what family was supposed to feel like. Simple, honest, built on love instead of obligation. I heard through mutual acquaintances that Sophia and Trevor had moved to Phoenix. Something about a fresh start and new opportunities. Harold was helping them financially, which seemed fitting. Let them be each other's family. The defamation lawsuit had been settled out of court for an undisclosed amount, which I donated to a scholarship fund for single fathers. Some victories are worth more than money. Isabella's husband Carlos joined us for lunch at a restaurant overlooking the reservoir. He was a good man, worked as a firefighter, treated Isabella and Lucia like they hung the moon. We talked about normal things: work, the weather, Lucia's upcoming birthday party. "Uncle Franklin," Lucia said as we were leaving, "will you come to my birthday?" "Wouldn't miss it, sweetheart." She hugged my leg with those small, fierce arms, and I felt something settle in my chest. Peace, maybe. Or just the knowledge that some relationships are worth protecting, while others need to be left behind. Sophia had taught me that blood doesn't automatically mean family, but Lucia was teaching me that family doesn't automatically require blood. Sometimes the people who choose to love you are worth more than the ones who are supposed to. The consequences for Sophia and Trevor were swift and lasting. Trevor never recovered his position in publishing, eventually taking a junior role at a small press in Phoenix for a fraction of his former salary. The business associates who had once courted his favor now avoided him entirely, seeing him as a liability. Sophia found herself ostracized from the Denver social circles she'd worked so hard to penetrate, her reputation permanently tainted by the very public family scandal she'd created. Harold's financial support kept them afloat, but the lifestyle they'd built crumbled under the weight of their choices. They lived quietly now, far from the spotlight they'd once craved, learning that actions have consequences that extend far beyond the moment they're committed. In the end, I realized that the strongest foundation isn't built on blood or obligation, but on mutual respect and genuine love.